What is up, guys? I am still sick, but today that's not stopping me from dropping a major update. Let's roll into it.
Alright, you guys, so this is the One ROM. Specifically, these are the One ROM fireboards. And they were dropped by peers a few months back, and a lot of people are pretty excited about these things for a direct EEPROM replacement. Now, these things were originally designed for use in like retro systems, like arcade machines and old game consoles, things like that. But yeah, we're seeing some people using these things to actually try to replace chip tuning and eliminate a burner and removing a chip from the socket back and forth. So anyways, over on PackROM, we can pull up all of the models here. And the one that we are interested in is going to be called the Fire 28. This is if you guys want to purchase a One ROM directly instead of purchasing an ALPHA respin of the board. Either way, I have to give major credit here to Piers for his One ROM. It is open source MIT licensing, so it is safe for me to go ahead and do what I'm doing to this. And not only that, not only the licensing okay it, but I actually contacted Piers directly, and he basically gave me the green light to go ahead and do this stuff. And he seemed pretty thrilled that it was something I was working on. So anyhow, you can see here that One ROM Fire is literally just a USB connector. It's a Raspberry Pi, and then it's pinned out. There is no additional hardware here. This one does have a small flash memory on it right here. You can use an RP2354 and it has the flash embedded in it, but it really doesn't matter. Anyhow, these things are super inexpensive. As you can see, if you buy 5+ of them, the price drops down significantly. So it's pretty cool. They also have it in a vertical selection here, which makes the price go up just a tiny bit. But the vertical does fit better inside of the ECU. A recent person that contacted me let me know that basically it was his suggestion to go ahead and put a vertical header on this thing so that it was easier to connect to, and Piers knocked this revision out for him pretty fast. So you can see it over here. It has the vertical connector on it, and the reason being is this USB connection actually comes out on the right hand side of the ECU, so right where that barometric pressure sensor is. It can kind of get right in the way. You kind of need like a 90-degree cable, or you're going to have to notch the ECU case to get a cable to fit properly if you're just using the flat version. But either way, it definitely does fit in the ECU and work. But yeah, this is the One ROM Fire. It's a regular EEPROM replacement chip. And the way that it actually works, let's see here, is using... Alright, so this is One ROM Web. This is the way that you typically would have to get your bin file onto the chip. You would have to go ahead and plug the device in, hit the connect button, and then down here you would set which model you have, and you would grab a image off your computer, and you could, right here, ROM configuration, you would upload a ROM file to it, and you would tell it what type it is. 27C is what you're after on here. And then you would flash it, and it would be on the device. And you would have to do this every single time you make a change to your tune file. You save the binary. You'd have to come into this web interface, rebuild the firmware, flash it to the device. But that being said, with the alpha rebuild of the firmware, we can now use it differently.
Alright, guys, so this is just a regular generic RP2350. It is pinned out to the ECU EEPROM header. Oh, shit. Clears the Oki cycle. Fires up. Plug it into the USB here. So it's going to go ahead and hit emulator, connect. download the ROM off of it. Here it is. Now I'm going to go ahead and make a live change. No check engine light. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to Emulator. I'm going to download the ROM back off of it. You'll see it's the same tables. No, I don't want to save changes. So right now we have live updates working. We can also update the entire map. Emulator, upload base ROM. I'm going to zoom out so you guys can see the dash. Okay, so we have no check engine light happening while the car is running. And then what's happening is right now we're doing all of this in the live SRAM on the RP2350. And what we want to do, since the RP2350 is actually a flash-based device, is we actually want to save this back into the persistent memory. So in order to get this onto the persistent memory side, we need to have a flash command. So currently HTS will not have this implemented into it. Perhaps HTS will implement the command. Until then, you'll need to use a serial monitor, or I'll supply you guys with a simple app that you can use. But essentially, right now I'm just going to go ahead and grab a serial monitor on the web. It would probably help if I disconnect the emulator here. So anyways, you're basically done tuning, right? You got your map all changed how you like it. You'll need to go ahead and either open up the application I provide for you guys, use a web serial monitor like this one, or HTS will hopefully implement this for us. The command is going to be CM. Okay, so now it's saved onto the persistent memory of the device. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this. I'm going to disconnect the device from the computer. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the car off. And now if we connect the emulator back on, what I've done is simulated a complete power loss to the RP2350. We can now go to Emulator, Connect, Emulator, download ROM, and we should see this exact table reappear. And there it is. Still at home sick, getting over the flu here, but I have had some time to go ahead and, holy shit, my hair is bothering me right here. Look at that, I look like a fucking Who or some shit. Frodo. Anyways, I'm not a huge fan of running a map in a car directly off of a microcontroller's internal SRAM, but it seems to be working. We've got a couple guys out there in the field that are running these in their car, and it works. So I went ahead and, upon request, I went ahead and went into the One ROM repo. I downloaded it, and then I went ahead and implemented it to be ostrich compatible. So it has a ostrich compatibility mode. It does not act like an exact ostrich. It is not a replacement for an ostrich, but it has ostrich compatibility. And what that does is it allows us to take One ROM and use it in HTS. So with One ROM, the way it works when it does not have my firmware on it is you have to use Peer's GUI through the web, and you will build a firmware for it, and you will select your ROM file or your tune file, and it will compile that tune file into the firmware and flash it onto the device. And then the car will boot it. So the issue here is once you do that, you're in the car, you're data logging, you make some changes to your map, you have to save the tune file again, and then you have to go back to Peer's website. You have to put that tune back into the firmware tool, rebuild the firmware, and flash it back over to the One ROM every single time. So there's a lot of stop and go if you're trying to tune your car with one of these One ROMs. So by using my modified alpha variant of the One ROM, you guys can now connect to One ROM with HTS. You can now upload your tune directly into One ROM. You can also make changes on the fly with One ROM, doing real-time updates to the internal SRAM memory. And then the other thing we did was we implemented a way to take the SRAM from live tuning, where you're making all your changes, and I have implemented a method to allow us to save that back to persistent flash memory when we've decided that we're all done tuning for the day. And the reason for that is not only does One ROM currently not support a way to get your modified file from the SRAM back to the flash, the other thing is a flash-based device has some drawbacks. So a flash-based device is only good for so many write cycles. I believe it's roughly 100,000 write cycles versus like a NVRAM or an FRAM has basically infinite write cycles. You can write to it basically as many times as you want to like the 10 millionth or something. So in contrast to a typical non-volatile memory, flash is definitely very subpar as far as how many write cycles it can handle. So I did not want to make it to where every time you guys made a change in HTS, it would also write back to the flash, because that would degrade the flash memory very rapidly. So by doing it this way, it will go ahead and allow us to get the most life out of the flash memory. Now, I may change some stuff in future firmware revisions. I will likely be adding the data log into this as well, because essentially what it is this is an alpha emu with the external parallel memory stripped off of it. So it's basically the same footprint, it's just got no external memory on it. No parallel memory, no sort of buffer system involved, no gating involved. It's just a plain Jane RP2350. So it's super inexpensive. If you guys build these things yourself, $5 or so, you guys can have a working emulator for your car. If you guys want to purchase these things, you can get them from anywhere pre-assembled from like $8 to, $30, depending on who you're buying from, what the markup is on it. So it's a very inexpensive solution for an emulator compared to 180 plus. There are some drawbacks to it. Some bugs that are currently in this revision 0.1 that I've created. First bug is it does not pass the Oki check every single time that you try to start the car. So if you turn the key from off position to on position, it has about a 75-80% chance of cycling correctly and the check engine light goes off. And then there's also a 20% chance that the Oki will not see the data on the bus in time and it will throw a check engine light. It's not a huge deal. You just cycle the key, wait a couple seconds, turn it back over, and it passes. The other thing is there's also a slight bug in my USB stack, and if you have the USB cable plugged into One ROM when you try to turn the car on for the first time, that also causes the check engine light to trigger, probably because the One ROM is trying to sample data that's not there yet, and then by the time you turn the car on, the data is there to be sampled and it's not in sync. So those are the two things. You can't turn the car on with the USB cable plugged into One ROM. You need to wait until the car is turned on or the check engine light has cycled to plug One ROM in. And the other thing is that occasionally when you try to turn the car on, you may get a check engine light and have to cycle the key with a slight pause in between a few times. Not a big deal, small bugs, but this is a really minor thing in contrast to paying for an expensive emulator. As you guys saw, it does do live updates. They seem to work pretty fine. Occasionally you'll get a slight hiccup in the RPM for a second when it makes a change. Not a big deal, but the Oki doesn't really catch it happening, so that's cool. The other thing is, like I said, I implemented that persistent memory save, essentially command save, which takes the live portion that we just tuned that's in the SRAM bank, which is a volatile memory, meaning when power is lost to the device, it loses that. It loses that mapping we did. So in order to get our finished tune that we just did off of that volatile SRAM, we have to send the CM command to the device for it to throw it back over to the persistent flash memory. So you guys are going to be looking for the One ROM Fire. It's a 28-pin version. Also probably going to just go ahead and respin the ALPHA Emulator board in a One ROM edition, and still use the larger 2350B chip on it just because I want to do a lot of extra cool stuff with it, and I think we can still maintain a lot of auxiliary inputs, maybe some potential outputs, stuff like that for people who don't want to do a whole VTech conversion, maybe do something like that. I'm not sure yet, but yeah, there's tons of room for the project, and it's really cool. I should have this firmware ready for you guys to go ahead and flash onto a One ROM or an RP2350, as well as the pinout if you guys just want to pin this thing up messy like I did. So yeah, definitely stay tuned, check it out. Let me know what you guys think. We now have real-time emulation off of a Raspberry Pi inside of a Honda ECU. So pretty cool stuff, cheap emulation, sub $10 range. And I also really wanted to mention again, major shout out to Piers for dropping One ROM and having the open source MIT licensing on the code side. I know the PCB side is a slightly different licensing, but we're not going to be really doing anything with the PCBs that he dropped. I really hope that you guys will support Piers and purchase the One ROM as it sits. Like I said, I will do an alpha variant of the One ROM, and it will still be called a One ROM, but it will have the alpha name on it as well. But that's going to be down the line. Right off the bat, you guys really need to show some support to Piers and purchase a One ROM. I'm not sure if he has a donation thing set up anywhere. If he does, I highly suggest you guys donate to him, because he really helped, as far as this emulator project indirectly, he really helped to eliminate a lot of the hardware and the cost of the device. And it's really because of his autonomous PIO DMA that he has implemented, including portions of his live update method, that really made the emulator project come to life extremely cheap. So really cool that Piers was able to share his One ROM open source with us. It's really cool that they are produced for very inexpensive and currently readily available. Shout out to those who reached out to me about One ROM, especially those who insisted that I make it compatible in HTS, not just mentioning it was a chip replacement, but you guys really wanted to see it come to life with HTS. So thank you again. Seriously, show some mad support for Piers over at One ROM. It was super, super cool of him. I'm happy that I could give back and generate this firmware so that you guys can start doing some tuning on the low. So until next time.